feel free to make donations to the campaign. We have a box out there, and it all goes towards the rental of the hall and towards the signs and ads and everything that we've been doing so far. So if you get a chance to make a donation, that would be really appreciated. At this moment, I'd like to call Chris Delany to come forward. Thank you.
This mic works, okay. Just stand out here a little more open. Thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to see such a good crowd here on our last stop. We're finding actually the crowds are a little bit larger for the exclusively yes HST meetings than the ones that Bill and I were doing the last couple of months here, where the government was sponsoring a debate between us and the no side. We were getting about half the crowd there, so I don't know what that tells you, but anyway. You know, the HST reminds me a little bit of the Stanley Cup, believe it or not. Because no matter how hard you look, you can't believe what you're seeing. Right? We thought the Canucks would win, and of course that didn't work out, and then all the craziness that went on in Vancouver yesterday, and you're just stunned, you can't believe it. And the HST is very similar. I was driving home from my place up country on the weekend, and all along the Coquihalla Highway they had these big signs by the Smart Tax Alliance saying, keep the HST, and then a great big green dot in the center, 10%, and then underneath, vote no to higher taxes. And I said, is that from our side or from their side? But of course, the HST is not 10%, it's 12%. And they want us all to believe that somehow if they say it enough times, we'll all think, yeah, I guess it's 10%. But if you bought a coffee at Tim Hortons today, you know it's still 12%. So we have a promise to make it 10% in 3 years. And of course, this is from a government that can't keep its word 3 days from now, much less 3 years from now. So how good is that? But the good thing, I guess the only good thing you can say about them trying to salvage this thing by lowering the rates and offering rebates and everything is that essentially the government now agrees with us. The tax does not work. Everybody admits that now, so they're tinkering with it and trying to find ways to get us to buy into it, but they admit now too it doesn't work either. So we're both on the same side, it's a bad tax. So what we're debating now is not whether it's a good tax or a bad tax, but what do we do about it? The government says, we'll cut it by 2 percentage points. How's that? And we say, well, if you like a 2% cut, then vote yourself a 7% cut and get rid of the whole thing. Top that, Kevin Falcon. I mean, 2%. What does that mean? Well, 2%, even if it were to happen 3 years from now, as they're saying, and we know there's going to be an election before then, so the likelihood of that ever happening is slim to none. But even if it did happen, we're still paying $1.5 billion more per year in taxes under the HST. And they think we're all dumb that we can't figure that out. But the reality is it's a tax grab because they've applied it to hundreds of other items and services which never had them before. So services, of course, are labor-based, and labor is the biggest portion of any type of an activity usually, especially in a service-based economy. So while HST only applies now, they say, to about 20% more items, it's actually a 59% increase in your sales tax burden. And as Glenn so correctly pointed out, it's a transfer from the corporations onto the consumer. So we don't get anything for it. We just pay corporations. And that's absolutely astounding when you consider it, because corporations in British Columbia, particularly the big resource companies, sell their commodities at the world commodity price. So there's no savings to be passed on to us because they don't sell directly to us anyway. But even if they did, it's set by the world commodity price. So they're not going to lower the price. And when they sell their goods, they sell them overseas, to the United States, to Europe, to Asia. So when we charge PST to corporations, they were essentially charging that PST to consumers outside British Columbia, to the Chinese, to the Europeans, to the Americans, who paid the corporations, the big resource companies, for those goods, and therefore paid the PST. So if there was such thing as a smart tax, none of us like taxes, but we know we need them. If there was such thing as a smart tax, it was the PST, because consumers outside British Columbia paid it. Now, under the HST, we're transferring that entire burden onto the people here in British Columbia. So now we're paying, and we're taking $2.8 billion a year out of the economy to pay this tax. There's no benefit to that. So what that means for all of us as consumers is we have less money to spend. So the only way around that is you dip into your savings or you cut back. The third option is you go to your boss and you say, I need a raise. I'm paying another $500, $600, and if you're a family man looking after family, maybe it's $1,000 or $1,200 a year in HST. I can't afford it, I need a raise. If the business gives you the raise, they've just wiped out whatever benefit it was to them. So what good is it? And you know, I love this statistic they give us. They tell us that the HST is a net cost of $350 per family in British Columbia. But you know how they get that number? They get that number by saying that economists estimate that 90% of what we pay in HST will be passed back to us in lower prices. Right. That along with the big job creation we've all seen, right? 90% of what we pay in HST is supposed to be passed back to us in lower prices by businesses. Well, we all know it's not true. So that means it's actually closer to $1,200 per family per year. That's the real cost. But let's just say for a moment it was true. That these crazy economists that they quote all the time, who will basically tell them anything if you pay them enough money for their study, but these economists that quote this, if it was actually true, that would mean businesses would only have 10% of the HST left over if they pass this back to you. And after taxes, that's 7% of the HST, which is about less than 1% of business revenues to any company. Now, what company is going to buy new equipment, stimulate the economy, and create jobs with less than 1% additional revenues? So you can't have it both ways. You're either not getting those savings and you're paying $1,200 more per year, or if you're getting those savings, then, you know, businesses would have all this money to do this, but they don't. So it's a lie. And they rely upon, or they think anyway, that we're all dumb and we can't figure this out. But the one benefit, if there is one, about the HST in British Columbia is that we've had it now for a year. We know what it costs us. We can do the calculations on our family budget. Unlike Europe, or even Eastern Canada, or anywhere else that they brought in an HST, where no one ever got another chance to say anything about it, we've had it for a year, and now we get to decide. So we're not going on a theory by some economist about what it'll do. We're going on cold, hard facts. We know what the HST costs us. And we have a unique opportunity here, like we've never seen it before in British Columbia or anywhere in Canada. We get to hold a government to account for a betrayal of their promise and for a bad tax policy before the next election. That's never happened before in British Columbia. And people have said to us, you know, why are you doing this? Why don't you have it out at the next election, and if you don't like what they did, you fight it out then? Well, how many times has that ever worked for us? How many times, I don't care what political party you're talking about, comes in the next election and undoes what the other guys did? It always stays in place, especially if it's a tax. So that's just another way of trying to get us to give up. But we're not going to give up. The government is going to give up. The government is going to give up. And they think they can wear us down, but they can't wear us down. Because all they have is money. And while money sounds like a big deal, when you have to lie, when you have to tell people that a tax is a percentage that it isn't, and that you're getting lower taxes by having it when you're not, when you have to lie to people, and you have to use money to pour that lie on every day on the radio and television, then you know you haven't got a case. We have something far more powerful than money. We have the truth, and we have the people. Vote yes to extinguish the HST and save our democracy. Vote yes to extinguish the HST and save our province. Vote yes to extinguish the HST and save your money. Thank you very much.